Good evening and welcome to the 19th hole. We are live as we are every Tuesday during golf season. We're heading down to Georgia for the RSM, and we got a special guest tonight. Bo's been a little preoccupied, so we're going to get into it tonight, and we'll introduce you to the special guest here momentarily. I made it a whopping 5 seconds into the show before I train wrecked one of our drops. So we're off to a good start. But this is the 19th hole live. We are brought to you by In Between Media. So if you like normally watching two fat guys get drunk and argue for about an hour or so on a school night, make sure you like and subscribe, jingle the bell for notifications, all that happy stuff. You can tell me how pretty I am, whatever works best. But yeah, so like we talked about, Bo is out for the evening, had to work a little bit late. So you may recognize Ian, who's been on previous shows. How you doing tonight, man?
Doing good, man. Yeah, good to meet you finally. I've heard a lot of things from Bo, coming here a couple of times with him, chopped up a little bit. So good to obviously meet another member of the IBT family. Obviously, had flag hunting. We do a little bit of NASCAR during that season too. So I'm pretty well acquainted with Seth and Elliot from over there. Just you guys have all been salty to us so far. So yeah, excited to chop it up. RSM Classic, last full field event of the year. So getting a little sentimental here at the end of 2023.
Yeah, I know. It's a little bit bittersweet. I mean, what do we got? Literally a week off before we get some more PGA golf, technically PGA golf. And then I think we got a solid month before we hit it full bore again. So, but definitely bittersweet. I don't know about you guys, but we've had a pretty good wraparound this year. Like we've hit quite a few outrights. We've had some success on the DFS front. How's it been treating you?
Yeah, can't complain, brother. Can't complain. I mean, last week went a little bit haywire at the end there. We had Alex Norton at 25-1, who obviously faltered to Camilo. But how mad can you be with everything he's went through over the last few years? So. But before that, we hit podcast first, hit 3 in a row with Tom Kim, Morikawa, and then EVR. So we're kind of rolling a little bit here in the fall swing, and it's one of those things you don't really want to end because it feels like we're seeing the board pretty well. So good feel to hopefully keep it going this week.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is that time of year, like Bo and I talk about it a lot. Like this is the time where there's, I think, an edge for people that really like know these players, know some of these lesser known guys, and do some of the analytical stuff, because guys will pop up that like, yeah, we see them in fields throughout the year, but like they're just not as prevalent. And so it's kind of fun to like kind of get to watch them and kind of get to see how they're performing, and hopefully carry them into the full season, because there's some really good players coming up, I think. So but yeah,
a lot of guys that have touted for a win soon that like somehow haven't gotten over the line yet. So I feel like the queue for like strokes gained due is very, very long right now. So hopefully one of those guys will hit and we can catch another one. But
that's like Eric Cole and Peter Quest every week. We're just talking about him every week. I'm like, it's got to happen sooner or later.
We'll get to a few of those guys in a second. Promise you that.
But I know you've got a busy night with grad school and stuff, so I'm guessing you're not imbibing.
I'm sorry?
I'm guessing you're not drinking any spirits or cervezas tonight.
Yeah, if you know me from flag hunting, you'll know that typically we record 2 episodes a night, golf and NASCAR, and usually by the end of the second one, I'm kind of Chris is having to kind of drag me through the last half hour. So it's only black coffee tonight, so I'll be wired, probably talking faster than I do normally. But yeah, we'll try to stay coherent here. The brain needs to work for the next at least 3 or 4 hours to get these deadlines turned in.
That at least makes one of us, because if you've watched us plenty of times, by about midway through the show, I'm pretty well served on some whiskey. So, and then the added responsibility of trying to run this thing tonight. So it should be really interesting, I think.
Sometimes you make your best decisions when you're a little bit you just kind of you just fire away, right? Just a little bit of less inhibition. You just look at the board, you see what looks good to you, and sometimes I think, especially with I think, so much time to start the week to analyze these players in these situations. You can definitely have a little bit of analysis by paralysis. So I think kind of getting on here and, being a bit, again, having a few drinks and talking shop, I think is really helpful for everyone out here.
Oh no, absolutely. And like even for us that look at this stuff all the time, like there's almost every week somebody brings up a good point, and I'm like, oh yeah, I really do need to add that guy to the pool. So yeah, without further ado, shall we get into some betting?
Let's do it. Yeah, full disclosure, because we never talked before. I'm more of a betting guy than a DFS guy. I've done my fair share of DFS research. I play a little bit on the side, but definitely more of my exposures in the betting market, specifically outright. So that's the kind of the avenue I'll be going down, especially at the top of the board. But we got some sleepers, I think, down the board to look at some placement markets and obviously some DFS stuff as the show goes on.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's hit the drop and we'll get into her. Usually the part where I take a deep breath and Bo mutes himself and has a sip of a drink. But so yeah, we're down at Sea Island Resort in St. Simons Island, Georgia. So what's interesting about this week is we got 2 courses in play. Golfers are going to play each of the 2 courses on Thursday and Friday. So they're going to play each one once, and then into the weekend, we're going to move over to just the Seaside course. So the Seaside course is a par 70, about 7,005 yards, give or take. You've got Bermuda greens there. And then the Plantation course, par 72, 7,060 yards, Bermuda greens there as well. I would submit that the Plantation course is generally the one that's going to play a little easier. It's usually a stroke or 2 better than the Seaside. There are some course comps to look at with this place. Wailea, Pebble Beach, El Camaleon, Port Royal, Sedgefield, Harbor Town. Some of those are some good parallels if you're doing some course comps. Yeah. All in all, though, I think that these courses, outside of the fact that you're kind of coastal link style on the Seaside, and the weather is a pretty good defense, and it looks like we are going to have some moisture and wind. Yep. Both Thursday and Friday. Looks like it may clear up a little bit on the weekend for moments, but that's the main defense. I mean, you're definitely wider than average fairways to tour standard. Seaside's going to have larger green complexes. See, the whiskey's already kicking in. Then a lot of tour stops. Whereas the Plantation, you're going to have tree line fairways, little narrower than the Seaside one, little narrower on the green complexes with a lot more greenside bunkers. So, the big key metrics that I looked at this week, I looked at shots gained approach, shots gained on par 4 and par 5s, skewing towards the easier par 5 setups, 3-putt avoidance, birdie or better rate, fairways and greens and regulation, and then opportunities gained, which not everywhere has that in their database. I think people are coming around on it, but those essentially are guys that are knocking it close, giving them good looks at birdie or better. So those were the main things that I cued in on this week. I didn't try to overcomplicate these courses. What do you got? I know you're from that part of the world, so.
Yeah, I actually have family on St. Simons. I guess step family. My stepdad has family down in kind of southeast Georgia. So I've yet to actually go to this event, but I know I've got aunts and uncles and cousins that have volunteered at this event and go here every single year. But yeah, I think it's well said, especially when you talk in terms of the comp courses you mentioned, because I think in general, when you kind of talk week to week on the PGA Tour, you notice a lot of through lines, through separate genres that we tend to visit over and over again. And this genre of coastal, southeastern, Bermuda grass, par 70, par 71, a lot of wedges, increased importance in putting. I think that means a lot. And I think, taking just an aggregated strokes gained total of places like Harbor Town, places like Wailea, even a place like Sawgrass, obviously here at Sea Island, Mayakoba when that was in rotation, I think that will help you a lot, because I think a lot of the same techniques and strategies and profiles that work at those courses will work this week as well. So even if a guy maybe doesn't have the same type of course history at RSM, if he's at least proven to me that he can get it done at a Sony or a RBC Heritage or another course like that, it gives me increased confidence that he can find his way around here, because it's not exactly a course that's tricked out or meant to get out to get you. It's pretty right there in front of you. So in terms of key stats, I'm right there with you. It's basically an iron and putting fest. If you can generate birdie looks with your irons and have some past success on Bermuda greens, some positive history on Bermuda greens, I think you're very live to win here, which is kind of what we've been talking about kind of before we went on about how wide open it feels like this field is and how many guys I feel like have a chance this week. So really interesting week, I think, to tout and to, make your selections and build your player pools, bet outrights, because you can make a lot of cases for a lot of guys, I think, this week.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this field, and I think in most history, I remember it being this way. A lot of the guys really do fit that archetype. And I think, as we were kind of like talking in the pre-show, and you just hit on it, I think there's just a lot of guys that could do well here. And I think there's a lot of guys that are really peaking at the right time too. So I definitely think it's a tricky week to get it right. And then on the putting front, I think what's been kind of interesting there too is, as straightforward as the off the tee and the approach game tend to be here, the greens actually do have some kind of elevation change to them, a lot of undulation. And what's weird, though, I think, is that you see guys that are gaining tons of strokes putting here year on year. And I think in a lot of ways it might be a little bit misleading as to how difficult these greens actually can be. So I'm definitely focused in on trying to find guys that are just kind of year-round good putters, and not necessarily isolating it on that particular stat. So
yeah, that's definitely been, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's been something that I've taken more emphasis on, or put more emphasis on, during the swing season, especially because I think a lot of us, when we first got into DFS golf or golf gambling, like the general consensus, like 3-4 years ago, was like, you just take the ball strikers and you hope they put that week, right? Like that was kind of the profile that we're all looking for. We, that's why we're betting guys like Luke List and Kyle Stanley every single week back in 2017, 2018. But I think, especially during the swing season, when the quality field goes down, the courses get easier, and there's just not a large selection of guys that can lap a field from tee to green, right? Like the difference between the end ranges from the top, the middle, and the bottom are so condensed here. And so whenever that's the case, I think putting gets propped up even more, because, again, you're just not going to see a guy gain 10 shots on approach like you would in a full field event when you have Scheffler and Hovland and Morikawa and Rory and Rahm, et cetera, right? Like, just the amount of guys that have that kind of ball striking ceiling are greatly diminished. So if you can find a guy that is consistent, at least with a putter, and has at least that kind of elite tool, it'll carry him a long way in terms of a floor ceiling combination when you project them forward.
No, 100%. Couldn't agree more. And I think we've got some of those guys. I think we got some guys in the mix here. So I'll just kind of kick us off here at the top of my board. I'm interested in Russell Heleny, outright favorite right now. Really sets up nicely here. I know 14 to 1 on Russell Heleny is probably a little shorter than I like to bet him, but he sets up so good here.
Yeah, I mean, I've got nothing to say, to be honest. I know a couple guys in the industry caught like some rogue 22s and 25s as the week first started. That's obviously been bet down to 14, 16, which is, personally for me, not a range I'm particularly interested in going for Heleny. I get all the arguments. I mean, statistically, there's really not a case you can make against him. I mean, the dude he dissects every single fairway. I mean, you talked about how forgiving the golf course is off the tee here. So I think in general, driving is de-emphasized this week. The thing is, though, if you do start to miss wildly around Sea Island, there's a lot of peril in play, as you'd expect from a coastal golf course. Actually, the penalty fraction here, which is the percentage of missed fairways that result in a penalty stroke, is 10.4%. So if you miss the fairway here, 1 out of every 10 drives historically has resulted in a penalty stroke. So it's much more of an accuracy test than, I think, a distance test. And obviously the past champions, guys like Svensson and Duncan and Howell and Kisner and and Streb would all kind of would back that up. So you talk about Henley, he's got the perfect profile for a golf course like this. Phenomenal Bermuda grass putter as well. Again, it's not really that I'm looking to pick on Henley in any kind of alternative market, but 14 to 1, 16 to 1 with, as we've kind of mentioned a couple of times, how many quality options I think there are present from like 20 to 50 to 1. It's just hard for me to make that kind of outright commitment. But it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Henley in the mix on Sunday afternoon. It really wouldn't.
No, and I think Henley, even with a driver in his hand, I mean, he hits fairways at about a 70% clip. And I mean, he's by no means a long hitter, but a couple of things I really do like about him and why I'm actually kind of leaning his way, even at a shorter odds, is he's somebody who historically plays substantially better as the conditions get substantially shittier. Like, as you look at some of his win stats, you look at those gusty high winds in excess of 20 miles an hour. Russell Heleny maintains a lot of the stats that we like about him as far as accuracy metrics are concerned. So, I like him. I like where he's trending. I mean, when you look at his last few starts, now granted that it's back in, June, July, August, but nonetheless, I mean, you got a 2nd, a 6th, an 8th, and a 14th at the Tour Championship.
Yeah.
Stiff fields, much tougher courses. And it wasn't like he was a slouch before that. I think his worst, I mean, he has a missed cut mixed in, but going back to May, I think the worst finish that I'm looking at was a 35th at John Deere. So, I mean,
yeah,
he's just on an elite level right now. And I if I'm not mistaken, he just crested in the top 25 in the world too. So,
yeah, to me, I mean, if you believe a Data Golf's process, I think he's actually the highest ranked player by Data Golf's model in this entire field. When you go back, I'm not sure what their exact sample is, but I know it's like an aggregated sample for the last 2 years on various tours. But yeah, when I talked about earlier, like the lack of elite ball strikers in this field and the lack of the guys that can like legitimately gain like weak breaking, slate breaking amounts of shots from tee to green, like Henley is not in that category. Henley is absolutely one of the best ball strikers in this field. And unlike a guy like Connors, unlike a guy like a Cam Young, who also kind of share that upside, you can trust the putter with Henley, especially on Bermuda grass. It's one of the most kind of robust or the most stark contrast in terms of agronomy for Henley. He doesn't really putt all that well historically on Ben or Poa, but you get him in the Southeast on Bermuda. This is his jam. So I'm looking at him 9,700 on DraftKings right now. I know we're talking outrights, but I mean, I would expect him to be very popular at that price as the 5th price guy on the slate, but the floor ceiling combination is so enticing. So it would be hard pressed for me to go completely 0% for him on DraftKings. So
yeah. And in transparency, like I'm definitely more over invested in him over on DraftKings than I am. Like, there are some other guys here that are at the top of the board that I like, but the elephant in the room for this show has kind of quietly started to be Ludwig Aberg. And I don't know if I don't know if you want to call it an eye test. I don't know if you want to call it me trusting numbers, but I feel like we're due for a blow up tournament from him because the approach game is still just not there. I mean, and this is a place, to your point, where once you start slipping on accuracy a little bit, you truly can find yourself in a lot of trouble. And especially greenside, which he also is not the world's best scrambler either. Greenside here, the rough tends to be even deeper and thicker than the rough that lines the fairways. So I'm not saying that I can be completely out on him. I'll probably have him in DFS, but I know he's getting a lot of hype. The win is coming, et cetera, et cetera. But there's some holes in that game that I don't know that I trust him. I'm seeing him at 12-1 right now.
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of preaching to the choir here. I mean, I've more or less given up on my like bearish stance on Aberg. Or Aberg, I'm sorry.
Yeah, however,
I bet him for the first time. I ate the chalk. I was pretty heavy on him at Los Cabos in his last start. Had a pretty bad Saturday round, but still ended up finishing inside the top 10. I share your sentiment. Like, I do feel like if there was ever a course that he's going to disappoint you at, it's a place like Sea Island that, again, like, you look at the guys around him, your Harmans, your Henleys, your Connors, right? Like, just top tier upper echelon, either approach players or putters. I wouldn't classify Aberg in that category quite yet. Like, he's definitely shown flashes of upside with the putter, shown flashes of upside with the irons, but as far as consistently on a week-to-week basis, like, those are far from his biggest assets as far as his statistical profile goes, right? So a place like Sea Island, where I think overall driving is de-emphasized, it's tough to like pay up both in the outright market and 10-9 on DraftKings, especially when a guy like Henley's 9-7. It'll be interesting to see where the ownership goes, because obviously Aberg is he's the star player in this field. He is the next biggest thing, I think, in world golf. We can kind of all agree. It's a tough fade, but I kind of side with you here that I would much rather go to Henley for a discount at $1,200 on DraftKings, and in the betting market, I never really looked his way at 12 or 14-1.
Yeah, I think the only reason I bring him up each week is I think people get really excited about the shiny new thing. And I think people are blindly walking up to bet this guy. And I'm 100% in, right? Like I know he's gonna win. He's probably gonna win a lot on tour.
Yeah.
Like he's a very gifted golfer, but at 22% projected rostership at the highest paid salary on DFS, and very short, what I consider to be very short odds for a guy that doesn't really, in my opinion, match up on the course.
Yeah.
I'm going to be out, and if he wins this week, God love him, and I'll take the L on it. But it's a little too rich for my blood on both fronts.
Yeah, if he wins this week, I know we're spending a lot of time on the first two names on the betting board, so you can feel free to cut me off. Because,
no, go.
But yeah, I think for me, if he wins this week, like independent of the fact that it's the RSM Classic, like this would do so much for I think his overall outlook. In terms of his career, because if he can beat like your Russell Henleys, your Brian Harmans, your Corey Connors on a golf course like this, like, man, you can't really ever make the argument that like he's just like officially course proof, because once we get to like the more longer, ball striking intensive stops where you hit a ton of drivers, you hit a ton of long irons, that's obviously where we're going to like him a bit more from a stylistic standpoint. So this will be a big test for him. I think, second shot golf course against guys that have played here many, many times before, know the course, and in many cases live on the golf course. It's a bit of an away day for Ludwig, and we're not really getting the discount that I think is warranted. So again, yeah, you're right. I think if he wins this week, then so be it. I'll concede he's the next biggest star in this game, but we'll get plenty of chances to bet him in the kind of months to come.
Oh, 100%. And the nice thing is I don't think either one of us is crazy enough to debate that he probably is the next big thing. But yeah, his time will come. I don't know. I don't think it's this week, but yeah, we talked a little bit about him in the pre-show. I got a lot of interest in Brian Harman at 18-1. As a matter of fact, I might have slightly more interest in Harman than Henley as far as the kind of top of this board goes. So reasons I love Harman are not dissimilar from reasons I love Henley. Harman typically is a very stellar approach game. He's had excellent form the back half of the year. If you had told me Brian Harman was going to be one of the starting guys on the Ryder Cup team, I probably would have laughed at you. I mean, there's just a lot of things with him right now that just make a ton of sense here. And the other thing I like is he's part of that whole Sea Island Mafia crew down there, and he's a Georgia Bulldog to boot. So I think he really knows his way around these courses. And boy, it's really hard to turn away from that.
Yep. No, you nailed it. This is my biggest outright position of the week. You can find 22-1. I'm not sure if you guys are sponsored by a particular book, but if you look around, shop around some legal venues, you can find 22-1 on Brian Harman, which is pretty unreal considering, I mean, he opened at 16-1, 14-1. He was kind of pretty unanimously the co-favorite with Ludwig on Monday morning. And we've seen a bit of drift out of the Open champion over the last kind of 24 to 36 hours. But again, he's the world number 9, former Open champion, and he returns to a golf course. We know about the form that he's in, but he now returns to a golf course where he has made a living on golf courses just like this. We talked about the comp courses at the Open, but places like Harbor Town, Sea Island, Sawgrass, Sedgefield, Waialae, TPC River Highlands, these short positional golf courses, a lot of wedges, a lot of putts, where you have to make a lot of putts. Since 2012, 18 top 10 finishes at those 6 venues. So like even before he elevated himself to become a major champion and top 10 player in the world, a Ryder Cup, Ryder Cup mainstay, Ryder Cup starter, a guy that scored 2 points for the United States. I mean, this is the exact kind of venue you would like Brian Harman at. Do you want to guess what he closed at last year at this very tournament?
Whatever it was, I'm sure it was super long. And as I recall, he was the runner-up here.
He was the runner-up, but he was 22-1.
Was he really?
So he has not moved in price. Now the field has gotten a bit better. Obviously, Ludwig has made the trip. Cam Young has made the trip. So there are some top dogs that have made the trip and maybe pushed some guys down the odds board. But the fact that he's elevated himself this far in the game of golf and his price has not changed at the exact same tournament, a tournament that you just said, finished runner-up at here last year. Also has a 4th place finish in the last 6 years as well. 2 top 15s to go in there as well. So yeah, you talk about a golf course that emphasizes accuracy off the tee. You got to be a good Bermuda putter, wedge player, short irons. Like it's a pretty easy sell for a guy like Harman. So Yeah, it's been, I think, 5 months since Harman's finished outside the top 30 on the PGA Tour, and I don't really think that streak's gonna end anytime soon, especially here at Seattle.
No, it's just wild, and I mean, obviously we don't need to beat the dead horse on Brian Harman because I'm with you. He's probably he's my strongest lean of the week too, but he's a lot like Henley in that if the conditions do deteriorate, Harman typically plays better. So. A guy that I already love how he sets up to begin with, and knowing that we've got the insurance that if it gets kind of shitty, he's still going to be able to roll with it. Yeah, this is a great position to have this week, I think.
Yeah, let it blow. I mean, he's an Open champion, for God's sakes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's if you have a Harman ticket, you're hoping for Windfinder to put some 25, 30 mile an hour forecasts out there because that's where he can really, I think, separate himself from a lot of these kind of pure ball strikers that maybe are pound for pound a bit more talented than he is.
100%. Well, I let in with those first three. Who you got? Who you got next for us?
Yeah, I'm not going to go too far down the DraftKings board. In fact, it's just going to be one down. I bet Corey Connors at 28-1, second biggest outright position of the week after Harman. But, just like Henley, we haven't seen Connors since the FedEx Cup playoffs. But if we kind of zoom out to encompass the entirety of 2023, like Connors is in a bit of a league of his own in terms of ball striking. Over a 72-round sample since the start of January, he's getting a total of 70.8 shots between his driving and iron play. Now that mark leads the field. Second best in the field is Steven Jaeger, who he leads by 4.5 shots, which seems like a pretty insignificant difference until you realize that Jaeger's played 20 more rounds than Connors has in that time frame. So on a per round basis, he is legitimately lapping this field over like a 10, 11-month sample here. We've already talked about the accuracy off the tee. Henley and Connors, I think, are very aligned in their ability to consistently create opportunities from the fairway with their irons. And since 2017, only one golfer in this field, that being Webb Simpson, has gained more strokes with their second shot around Seattle, and he's gained 15 shots. Has Corey Connors through 12 recorded rounds. So from tee to green, there's really no, qualms with Corey Connors as there is. There's never really any qualms with Corey Connors. The obvious pitfall would be on the greens. Historically, has been his bugaboo, but notably, over the last 3 starts here at RSM, he's been a field average putter. He's gained in 2 of his last 3 starts. Cumulatively, it's been about a 0 over those. I believe that'd be what's 3 times 9 recorded rounds. Sorry. Yeah, long day.
I hear you on that.
This is a guy that he won the Valero Texas Open this past year. He gained like less than half a stroke on the greens. So this is a guy that can legitimately, like I said with Henley, like provide game breaking upside with his ball striking. And if he's just has a pulse on the greens, I think he contends. So Connors 28-1. He's also, to kind of the point we've been beleaguering with guys like Henley and Harman, really, really proficient wind player as well. We talk about places like Kiowa Island. He's played really well overseas at the Open historically too. So he's really proficient in the wind. And you see that oftentimes with elite ball strikers. When conditions get tougher, that's when they tend to actually separate themselves even more. When you have to hit a wider variety of shots and really have solid contact to get through that wind. So Harman Connors going to be co-captain of the card here at the RSM.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I'll be honest. He's one of the final cuts I'm looking at making, and I think the problem that I have with Corey Connors is just strictly that putting piece. Like when I looked at historically, like what has happened for the winners at this tournament, it's guys that did gain putting, and I'm really, really on the fence about whether Corey Connors can be just nails enough with his approach game to offset the fact that we just know he's not going to gain with the flat stick. So yeah. I'm with you. He's really tough, and that's why he's right on the fringe for me. And he may end up on the card just because I'm going to have FOMO about how elite a ball striker he is. But
yeah, I definitely have a bit of a type when it comes to golfers. Like my favorite golfer is Colin Morikawa. So I don't know if it's because I can see parallels in my own game, but like I tend to like the accuracy specific guys off the tee that are really, really good iron players. Like that's kind of, again, my type. And I feel like the RSM is like the perfect venue to kind of press that profile, press that advantage. And yeah, like you said, like Corey Connors could easily lose 5 strokes putting and the bet is absolutely dead at that point. But like he's just a step, like it's not often you get by far the best ball striker in a given field at 28-1. And so if we can just putt field average or just a slightly above field average, like all of a sudden, like he's contending at a golf tournament like this in a field like this. So That would be my kind of caveat. But yeah, I've got not much of a comeback for the possibility of Conor's completely putting his way out of this tournament.
Now you're talking me into him. What's your take on the JT Poston hype? Because I got to tell you, like it's not a guy I normally jump on board with, but over the last 36, he rates out third in the model I put together, and like I'm starting to come around, and it plus 3,000. I mean, he looks as though he sets up pretty good for this.
People are going to think I'm like betting every guy on this board.
Same.
But I'm a big Poston guy, so I've been chasing the Poston win for. This is one of the guys we talked about. Strokes gained due. JT Poston very due. I mean, you just look at the last few results he's had on the PGA Tour. Last start here, finished third at the Shriner Children's Open, finished 22nd and 24th in 2 playoff starts, 7th at the Wyndham, 2nd in the 3M, 2 top 10s at the Scottish Open and the John Deere. And to your point, like it's hard to model anything out this week if you're looking at the right stats and not have JT Poston kind of fly towards the top. Right. Like we've talked about accuracy being obviously very important off the tee here, or at least more important than the distance. But with 45-yard wide fairways and, a past champions list that includes guys like Robert Streb and Taylor Gooch and Mackenzie Hughes, right? Like you don't have to be a prolific driver of the golf ball, I think, to win here because it is so generous off the tee. And you add in the fact that there's a lot of kind of short par fours from kind of 380 to 420 where you can hit 3-wood off the tee. You can hit driving iron even if you're not comfortable. And so if you get rid of Poston's like deficiencies off the tee, which are clearly there, if this is a golf course that required you to hit a ton of drivers into really narrow corridors, I wouldn't like Poston as much. But if you do subscribe to the notion that Sea Island will allow for some forgiveness off the tee, like when you isolate for iron play and putting, there's no one better. There's nobody better in this entire field, right? Over the last 36 rounds, to your point, ranks first in birdie chances created, ranks first in strokes gained putting, second in birdie better percentage, fifth in strokes gained approach, and fourth in my weighted proximity model. He's also had some of the best results of his career around kind of shorter positional tracks like Sedgefield, Deer Run, TPC Summerlin, River Highlands, etc. So again, I just think it all fits. I really truthfully wanted to bet him at Cabos. I was surprised he didn't make the trip to Mexico considering how wide those fairways were. I thought that was really, really well suited for his game, but 45-yard wide fairways here at RSM, I think will do him pretty well. So,
yeah, and what's interesting too that I looked at that kind of made him even more enticing to me is as I looked at the strokes gained off the tee, like it's not like he's been abysmal. I mean, he's not great, but I mean, most of his starts he's around losing a stroke or stroke and a half. If you look at the overall average on the season, and to your point, like some of the spots like at the Heritage. I mean, it gained 3.25, 3.5 strokes off the tee. So, I mean, I think that really this is going to be an up week off the tee for him. And then the rest of it is just stellar statistically. Like you can't ignore it. And I don't think that he's any less a class of player than the guys that we've already talked about that are at shorter odds. I mean, JT Poston is absolutely due. So I really like the number on him.
Yeah. If it was a 1v1, if I could only pick one, I would actually go with Poston over Connors. Personally, I'm very, very high on his chances this week. And like I said, I mean, he's some of the problems that I have with a lot of the top of the board guys are the fact that we haven't seen them since the playoffs. And, you just never know if Russ will be a factor, if maybe just not getting those competitive reps will be a factor over a long layoff, 2-3 months long. Like Poston was a top 3 finisher. He was right there in the mix of the Shriners just last month, right? So he's kind of gotten in the action, gotten in the fire. Very well could have won that tournament, right? He made like a triple bogey on the 16th hole, the par 5 on Saturday that took him out of the lead. So, it's historically like JT. This has like been a very outlier stretch for JT Poston compared to the rest of his career. Like he's typically not this good of a ball striker. But like we now have like a 3, 4, 5 month sample of JT Poston being like a top 10 iron player on the entire PGA Tour. And you're getting me 33-1 at a golf course like this. Southern kid, North Carolina kid, shout out 704 Hickory. I'm from Charlotte, so it's not that far away. But yeah, he's competent on Bermuda grass, won the Wyndham, has a top 3 finish at the Heritage too. So I can't say enough good things about J2 this week.
I'm just genuinely happy that we got a shout out on this show because I wasn't sure what we were going to do without Bo shouting out NorCal every 2 minutes. So, so
I've got plenty more North Carolina guys on the card if that's what you're looking for. I didn't notice it until I actually finalized my betting card, but yeah, a lot of Southeastern and particularly North Carolina representation this week.
So I've got, like you said, we could probably go all night with the list of players that we've got that we want to bet because there are a lot of guys that make a lot of sense here.
Yeah.
I'll skip down a little bit. We've got complimentary articles on both of our affiliates, so feel free to read our content as well. But one of the guys that really has started popping up, and I think is also a guy that might be slightly due, is Davis Thompson at 55-1. Been playing excellent golf as of late. He rated out incredibly well for me. He popped to number 6, and a couple of the things that really stood out to me with him. He's number 1 in this field for strokes gained on par 5s, which I don't think is necessarily a make or break as you're modeling, but I think it is a stat that may have some importance, especially on the plantation side. So I like that. And then as I kind of looked at some of the kind of greens and regulation approach, scrambling, those types of stats, he also continued to rate out surprisingly well there. And he's good at avoiding big numbers, makes a lot of birdies. If there's anything that kind of worried me when I was looking at him, it was his kind of fairways and regulation percentage, which typically is pretty low. He's kind of middle of the pack here. But like we talked about, these kind of wider coastal courses, especially right now in the wraparound, he seems to be kind of finding his groove off the tee. So the rest of the game, I think, lines up pretty damn well for here. And again, I think he's kind of in that same class as the guys that we just talked about that are way, way shorter. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him pop off.
Yeah, he's a guy that I feel like as you shrink the sample size down, if you're looking for more like guys that are in just good recent form, I think Thompson's stock will rise as you shrink the sample size down. Historically, pretty average ball striker on the PGA Tour, but to your point, man, like since the swing season really started, like he's not finished worse than 35th in 5 starts since the Wyndham. As you mentioned, man, he's gained strokes and approach in his last 4, gained strokes off the tee in his last 7. So, like, the ball striking is very clearly working here. He's also, Georgia kid. I believe he won. I saw on Twitter that he won like a big amateur tournament here as well. So you can get that narrative out there for Davis Thompson beating some 16-year-olds, 5-10 years ago. But yeah,
I'm down for a story.
Yeah, exactly. It'll come up on the broadcast if he's like inside the top 5. Like they will not stop talking about the 2017 amateur win that he had here. But yeah, I think you can make a really good case for Thompson. I do worry about the putter a little bit, right? He's not really ever been a consistent putter on the PGA Tour. And like, he's not quite in the caliber of ball striking where I think it can single-handedly carry him to a win. I think he is going to have to gain, 3-4 shots putting unless he just has like an all-time ball striking week. So for me, I like him in DFS. I think he's going to have a good week. I couldn't quite get there at 50-1. There's just a couple guys I think I like a little bit better in that range. Like a guy like Taylor Pendrith for me is I think a similar price, and I think he fits a lot of the same skill sets as Davis Thompson, being long off the tee, having a really, really nice stretch with his iron play. Last 3 starts, he's finished 3rd, 15th, and 8th. And he's historically played shorter courses really, really well. We're talking about 2 start to the RSM, 15th and 26th. He's also, popped up at places like Pebble Beach, at Bermuda, your Rocket Mortgages, your Wyndhams, your Sawgrasses even. So Pendrith's kind of, even though he's long off the tee, he's tended to play these shorter, more positional courses a bit better, specifically on the coast. So I think Pendrith just carries a bit more pedigree for me personally, a little bit more of a known commodity than Thompson. But I can't really argue with either one of those guys.
I'm with you on the Pendrith. What's interesting to me is that he's a bomber. He's a bomber who historically can't putt. And somehow, like if you look at the last 36, I think he's in the lower third of this field in terms of long-term putting stats. Mm-hmm. But all of that, even his putting right now, is just, it's flat to the field over the last 5 and 10 starts.
Yep.
So, to your point about some of these guys, he may be that kind of exception to what I'm calling my rule for the week, where he may have enough ball striking prowess right now to completely offset the fact that he's going to be flat with the putter. He may not be the guy that needs to gain 3-4 strokes with the putter to get the win. Mm-hmm. And I mean, yeah, you can't deny how good he's playing right now. So also on yield card, I'm just going to mortgage the house and fill out my card this week.
Yeah, just a solid 12 names on the card and let it ride for a 2x ROI.
I'm just looking for a Big Mac and a Coke, man.
Yeah, I get it. Hey, it's the last event of the season. Just fire away. If you go a little over budget, so be it. For the record, I didn't actually bet Pendrith this week. I actually wanted to pick your brain about him on DraftKings, specifically with the ownership. He's $7,600 on DraftKings, which is like objectively maybe the biggest misprice on the entire slate. Like, to put in context some of the guys around him, like also $7,600, Taylor Montgomery, Cameron Champ. You have KH Lee at 75, Matty Smith at 75. Like, I think Pendrith's just in a higher quality of player than these guys. So he's an obvious play if you just want like a free square, but I worry he's going to be like 40% or 30%, something ridiculous like that.
So right now, I mean, the ownership projections that I've looked at, and we can do a couple of deep shots and definitely get into the DFS here too pretty quick, because there's a lot of ownership plays that we definitely need to go over, but we'll give the teaser on this one. What's wild about Taylor Pendrith this week is he's only projected at about 10.5%. Now, granted, that's amongst like kind of sharp people that use stat modeling engines. That's not general public. Nice thing about the general public is we don't get nearly as many general public people playing during football. So we may have a bit of an edge there, but I'm with you. It's a real misprice. And I think the only thing that's drawing rostership away from him is honestly that Ben Griffin is $100 cheaper than him, who I drink the Ben Griffin Kool-Aid most weeks, but not this week. I'm not going to pay 17% for Ben Griffin when I can have Taylor Pendrith.
Yeah. So I've done the unthinkable this week. I've not bet Taylor Pendrith, as I mentioned earlier, in the outright market. I had bet Ben Griffin to win outright. As I think of my rights, as I even think about the thought of him in condition on a Sunday. But I bet him at 80-1. And my reasoning for that was, me and Chris talked 6 days ago on Flag Hunting about the betting board, and specifically from like 20 to 30-1. I liked a lot of those guys in that range. I thought there's kind of a tier gap between those guys. Obviously, Vajegas wanted 100, but I really concentrated a lot of my effort from 20 to 30-1 last week, and Brendan Giffen was right there. He was one of those guys alongside a guy like Brendan Todd or Akshay or Pendrith. Noren was right there as well at 25-1, and Griffin was a popular pick last week, right? He's a guy that was, he almost won, or he held the lead with 8 holes to play at Bermuda the previous year, coming in with good form, runner-up finish at the Sanderson Farms. And he didn't really play that bad, right? He got off to a slow start, shot even par the first day, then went 63, 69, 69 to round out his week, finished T37. Shout out, Seth. And now he's priced like 2 times the number of guys like Noren and guys like Pendrith and guys like Akshay, which I don't really understand, because I think Sea Island is as good of a fit for Ben Griffin as Bermuda was. Like, obviously he doesn't have the 3rd place finish he did back in 2022 here, but we're talking about a golf course, again, that's very generous off the tee. That's his number one weakness. So if you can, again, like my general thesis towards the back of the board is like, if I'm going to choose one thing to be bad at, like, I don't mind if you're bad off the tee, as long as you can make up for it with some upside with the irons and the putter. And Ben Griffin certainly has that. Like, he is a top 10 Bermuda putter over the course of his career. He's been known, especially on these shorter golf courses, to really spike with the irons, with his short irons and his wedges. And again, like 80-1 just feels like a bit of an overcorrection based on where the sentiment was last week. So that's my case for Ben Griffin. I know it's kind of gross, and I know a lot of people were on him at the Sanderson Farms at a pretty big number when he just absolutely choked. I was on him at the Bermuda Championship last year, so I understand. I understand the sentiment. My big pushback on that, number one, is the fact that I don't think like choking contention is an indictment on a player's like just trajectory. Like I think you can like legitimately, this kid's only been on tour for a year. Like, he's going to learn from this. Like, that's a big time learning experience for him. And when you actually look back at how he played the final round in the Sanderson Farms, like, he actually hit the ball and approach really well. He actually putted really well. The driver was an abject failure. He was having to pitch out on par 4s and hit his 3rd shot from the fairway. Like, that's how bad the driver was. I think Sea Island's a much more forgiving driver test for Ben Griffin. Like, Sanderson's rough this past year was actually pretty grown out. It was actually pretty penal compared to like a regular swing season event. Wider fairways this week, less rough penalty. If you could just keep the driver in play, like I think there's definitely a pathway for him to contend. And again, I don't agree with a general number. So,
yeah, I'll tell you my holdup. What's been my holdup with Ben Griffin for quite a while now, and I definitely see what you're saying with Sanderson, but Sanderson Farms was a massive outlier for him in terms of strokes gained approach. Like he gained almost 7 strokes that week, which is a wild number for a guy that normally is around that 2 strokes a week. Now, that being said, he's gaining strokes on approach. He's an excellent approach player. Definitely wouldn't take that away from him, but he's got to have just an otherworldly approach week to be in that level of contention, right? And if you look at the rest of his finishes, I mean, he's just, to me, he's a DFS play if he's anything. Maybe get him into some kind of to make the cut parlay or something like that. I mean, he's definitely going to probably get through the cut for you. I have a hard time betting an outright on Ben Griffin anymore. He just doesn't. I don't think he has the chops to get it done, man. And that's okay. Some very good golfers don't. There's a lot of guys that don't win, but are excellent golfers. Yes. And unfortunately, I think he may be slotting himself into that mold here.
Yeah. I think you're on the prevailing side here. I think I'm on the contrarian side, betting Ben Griffin outright. I certainly like his overall profile. I'm going to have top 20 exposure to him. I'm going to play him on DraftKings, so it's not just entirely outright, but yeah, when I just looked at the betting board, just based on like the guys he was around, I was like, Ben Griffin at this golf course is better than this. So look, if he blows another 50-hole lead and, I'm depressed on Sunday afternoon, so be it. But I do believe in the profile. I do believe Sea Island is a golf course that he can genuinely contend at, and we're getting a really big number. So that's enough Ben Griffin talk. I know that.
No, we'll do a couple. I'll do my deepest shot that I've got is Ryan Moore at 100-1. Liked how he set up last week. He's in great form in the wraparound. We seem to be on a bit of a Ryan Moore resurgence tour.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to him at 100-1. That's probably the deepest, and then whatever your deepest shot you got, and then we can jump into some ownership projections for DFS and get you on out of here.
Yeah. So I bet Ben Griffin, like I said, at 80-1. I'm going 10 points down the board. I bet another North Carolina guy, Chesson Hadley, 90-1. Who again is another guy that I feel like, I mean, not due is not the right word because he's not really quite been in the thick of contention yet, but he's coming off back-to-back 7th place finishes at the Shriners Open and the whatever it's called, the Worldwide Technology Championship at El Cardinal. But again, like I've been on the soapbox for the last like 20 minutes, but you isolate putting, you isolate iron play, and like the recent form for Chesson Hadley has been like legitimately up there with some of the best ball strikers in the entire field. Right, last 28 rounds. This is since the start of July. Chesson rates out for me 17th in strokes gained approach, 23rd in birdie or better percentage, 5th in strokes gained putting. His last 2 registered starts on the PGA Tour, like I mentioned, the Shriners, and before that was, I think, the Sanderson. Yeah, so last 5 starts on the PGA Tour, he's gained an average of 3.4 shots on approach. He's always been a really, really good putter. He hasn't finished outside the top 30 in strokes gained putting on tour since 2019. Carolina kid, puts really well in Bermuda historically too. And again, his biggest deficiency for me is taken away with the generosity afforded to players off the tee here. So Hadley, I think, is in a really good spot right now. And another guy that I mean, he was another guy that before he withdrew at Bermuda was probably one of the more popular picks on the board at like 30, 35-1. He withdraws there. Back at the RSM, he's 90-1. I'm going to take that shot.
No, I love that. And we haven't mentioned it on a lot of the last few guys that we've talked about. And it kind of goes without saying on most of them because they got some roots down here in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. But Hadley's another dude that like the windier it gets, the better. So yeah, I'm with you on that. That's definitely I'm probably more exposed in DFS to him, but I definitely like Hadley here. So yeah. So speaking of DFS, we can pop over and do a quick run through of each of the kind of tiers and do some ownership and see if we can not slam some trunks again this week.
The club is well. This would be a wrestling class.
So DFS. You know, the beautiful thing is that most of the guys that we have interest in betting are the same guys that we want to play in DFS, and
Right.
we've named quite a few for your selection.
Yeah,
But
the entire top of the board, I think we like. So do with that what you will.
but I think something you hit on much earlier in the show, and I think it's something that this show, Bo and I typically really focus a lot of energy on is kind of nailing down some of the rostership projections and trying to give people some ideas on where to pivot and what makes sense. Why play this guy at this dollar amount when you can play this guy similar style golfer with half the ownership at $200 less. So getting at the top of the board. Coming into it, it's right now. The clear leverage play is Cameron Young, who I don't know about you, but fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 27 times. I just can't. I can't keep going back to Cam Young. I don't care what the rostership is.
Not here. Yeah. I mean, I think he's probably the most polarizing player on the board. I think the general consensus on everyone in the top kind of 5 or 6 names is pretty positive. I think Cam Young's really the only one you get a bit of pushback on if you really heavily touted this week. Pretty pedestrian performance over the last 3 rounds. El Cardinal after, I think he was top 5 after the first round of the tournament, or the favorite to win the tournament after 18 holes. And I think he goes out and makes 4 bogeys on the front 9 as his next, on the next day on Friday, and completely pushes himself out of the mix. So in a very similar vein to Ober, it feels like Cam Young's biggest asset, which is kind of his just total driving acumen, is a little bit taken away here. He just kind of falls a little bit behind the likes of a Harman or a Henley when it comes down to just approach play and putting, but specifically over the last kind of 3-4 starts, the iron play has been pretty poor for Cam Young. So I am buying long term. I'm not giving up by any means. I still think he's a future top 5, top 10 player in the world. But I think you got to have a lot of stones to play him this week in any capacity.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say on Cam Young is, and I think my exact wording is at El Cardinal, I said if Cam Young can't get right here, I'm not real sure where Cam Young can get right. Yeah. I mean, he had wide open everything. Literally, all he had to do is strike the ball. He had 100-yard wide fairways, couldn't get it done. So I'm with you. I think this is. Though not narrow, significantly more narrow. And I mean, that's too much risk at 10-6 in a DFS lineup. I probably will eat the chalk on Brian Harman. He is pushing around 28-29% projected, but I like him that much. And Corey Connors and Russell Heleny are both right there in that 25+% projection. So I think it's a lot of pick your poison there at the very top.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. I really did think Henley was going to garner a lot more ownership. I thought because Harman was $600 more expensive, we might get a bit of an ownership discount on him. And in that scenario, I would actually, I'd be right on your side with Harman. But if they're all the same ownership, I think I would take the $600 savings with Henley, and just because I really don't see a ton of separation between those 3 guys. I think they all have a lot of compelling upside, and their just innate qualities lend itself to a very high floor. With Henley's ball striking, Connor's ball striking, and then Harman's short game and acumen off the tee. I think it's hard for me to imagine any of them bottoming out. So I'll take the savings with Henley. He's got very similar upside to the other 2, and use that $600 elsewhere down the board.
No, and I do actually agree with you. I'd probably, obviously we're not doing just one lineup. I mean, Harman, I think I'm just going to keep beating the drum. I love Harman this week. That's probably my biggest stance. But in terms of DFS roster construction, I mean, to your point, I definitely just drop down $600 and build out more lineups with Henley. Very similar golfer, very similar setup.
Yeah.
Corey Connors is the one that I probably will end up fading altogether. I just think the risk at the same rostership is higher with him.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see him going to the same ownership as Henley and Harman, given their history on this venue. So, I would have said he was probably the second most clear arbitrage play in the top 5. But yeah, if that many people are on Connors this week, then I'm completely fine with your sentiment of pivoting off him.
Yeah, and what's wild is Poston's actually projected at 30% right now, which isn't wild, I guess, given a lot of the reasons we talked about betting him outright. But 9,300 is a lot more than I'm typically used to spending on JT Poston. And, you look around him. I mean, the next guy, Eric Cole at 9K, also 30%. I mean, I've got myself all but talked into playing like a Justin Suh or Stefan Jaeger is, both of those guys are sub 5% projected rostership. And yeah, they're riskier, but still, I think at the top of the board, I mean, 30% on Poston and Cole, it seems just wild to me.
Yeah. That's, I mean, especially if you're getting Jaeger sub 5, you're telling me the market thinks there's a 6 times better chance that Poston outperforms Jaeger. Like, that's not. I don't care who. Like, you take 2 golfers that are even close to similarly priced. Like, that's not going to be the case. So, I think that's a blind ownership fade for me. Like, you can still get 30, 35 to 1s on Poston and Cole in the market. I like both those numbers. I like both those guys this week. But yeah, DFS, like you're not just playing the market. You're playing against other players, and you're trying to find leverage spots. So, Jaeger's a guy that I think if you model anything out, it rates out very, very well. I mean, people forget he was in the last group on Saturday at Los Cabos. Now, he had a horrible weekend and finished T45, but showed enough for me at that golf tournament. He's kind of long been one of the kind of rising ball striking stars kind of in the second tier of the PGA Tour. So, I'm very comfortable going to Jaeger if we're getting a big time discount. Suh for me is just he's really confusing because historically not a very good ball striker. Like, basically throughout the entirety of 2023, he relied almost entirely on the putter. But obviously the last 2 starts he's made, he's finished inside the top 5 in both starts, right? Zozo and at Los Cabos at El Cardinal. So something must be happening for him. But of course, we don't have strokes gained data to really back anything up there. So it feels like we're kind of buying at the ceiling on Suh. I would much rather, I think, go with Jaeger, who I think has a bit more of a long-term pedigree of kind of consistent play and consistent tee to green play.
Yeah, the part I'll add on Suh is I think what's interesting about him is he doesn't necessarily fit the archetype of the elite ball striker, but he is in form and he is as elite as they come in this field at putting. I think the only guy that maybe is more elite at putting than him is Denny McCarthy. So I mean, you look at some of the stats going season long with what Justin Suh does week on week. I mean, the guy just crushes on the greens. I mean, you're talking 5, 6, 7 strokes. Happens often.
Taylor Montgomery-esque through a lot of 2023. It's like I played the fade Justin Suh game for a long time, and it just like he just kept gaining strokes putting, like 6, 7 strokes putting a week, which is not a profile I'm particularly interested in buying. But like you said, we don't really know what happened. Like maybe he is going through a ball striking renaissance with those 2 starts inside the top 5. Like, you really don't know. Like, we don't really have much context at the Zozo and the WWT because of the lack of strokes gain data. So if you want to play that angle, and obviously we're getting an ownership discount, so it's not like we are paying up for him, but it's not like we're paying up and he's garnering ownership. So you do get a bit of built-in leverage there as well. And if the heater continues, all of a sudden, like, you are smoking and joking with him sitting in your lineup.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing we always talk about. I mean, when you're talking about a guy projected at maybe 2-3% roster, you need out of your 10 lineups, 2 or 3 to be equal to field, like it's an easier, not even 2, you need 1 to be over the field rather. So he's a guy that I'm definitely going to be mixing in, so that we don't run too far over. I'll get down the board into some of these mid-tier plays. Anybody that stands out to you that you really want to buy in on in the 7s? In the
7s. Yeah, we already kind of talked about Pendrith. We did our spell on Ben Griffin, who I will be playing. I don't know, man. Honestly, I see a lot more opportunity in the 6s, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I'm a big Callum Tarrant guy. He finished runner-up here last year. When you look at the kind of the recent ball
I knew there was a reason Seth liked you.
Oh, he's a big Callum Tarrant guy? I did not know that.
That's Seth's one and only DFS golf call of ever.
Look at that. Yeah. I mean, I bet Callum more than I care to admit. But yeah, it feels like 7,300 for a guy that's been in this type of sustained ball striking form is pretty damn solid. I don't know what the ownership's doing for him right now, but a guy who can really kind of bully a golf course off the tee, especially in a place like Seattle that has such wide fairways. And he's actually a damn good approach player, especially in a field like this. So definitely a flawed golfer when it comes to the short game, but he carries as much ball striking upside as anyone you could find at $7,300. So he would be the one that sticks out to me, I would say.
Yeah, I'm with you. Bo hates it that I'm with you guys, but I do like him, and he's projected at 8%. So I think he's a nice complementary piece to a lineup, especially in there with Webb Simpson right below him, who for some unknown reason is like all of a sudden people are going to believe that course history is going to be enough to carry the ghost of Webb Simpson over the finish line. And I just don't get it, man. Like I'm a big Webb Simpson fan over the years. Like I really enjoyed his style of golf for a long time, but he's just not done anything that makes me believe that he's anywhere near being back.
Yeah, Charlotte guy. So big respect to Webb Simpson. He's probably the best golfer Charlotte's ever produced, just off the top of my head. Davis Love actually would be the best golfer Charlotte's ever produced. But yeah, I'm with you because I'm generally not a guy that likes to buy into course history. Like if I'm choosing between recent form and course history, like it's only ever going to go one way. The thing with Webb is like we would have said the same thing like 2 months ago at the Wyndham, and he just pulls a 5th place finish out of nowhere at a golf course very similar to RSM, where he just consistently over the course of 5, 10, 15 years has just racked up wins and racked up money there. Yeah, I'm not going to be overly exposed to Webb, but if he's just like, if people just think he's completely cooked, like I don't mind throwing him in a couple of lineups just in case. I mean, his game is like, he's still a very good putter. He still hits the ball relatively straight off the tee. If we can just get like one vintage iron, we can Webb can win this tournament. It's just the range of outcomes is just so damn wide.
Webb could have won this tournament. I don't know that I genuinely believe Webb can win this tournament anymore. But that's not the point at $7,200.
Right. He can still, like his upside, I think, is maybe a bit more unappreciated than you would get credit for a 39, 40-year-old golfer that has not been good for a couple of years now.
No, for sure. And like I said, I'm a huge Webb Simpson fan, always have been. So nothing would tickle me more than to see him, show up and perform and do well or return to some semblance of form. That would be amazing. But Bo knows Webb Simpson and I have a very tumultuous relationship. So getting down there, yeah. In the sevens, you mentioned Hadley.
Yeah.
So that one's definitely on the board. Matty Schmid, I think you gotta take a few shots. 7,500, quite frankly, seems like a misprice, and probably because they can't react quick enough to get him priced correctly. I mean, he's just very, very live to win anytime now. He's in excellent form. Yes. We don't have as much analytics stateside as maybe we need to have to really talk intelligently about him. But off the tee game has been good. Approach game has been good. He hits the ball close. He knocks a lot of birdies in. He avoids big numbers. And really just over the wraparound season, I mean, this is a guy I think is going to make a ton of noise this year. And on top of that, he absolutely crushes the piss out of golf balls around 315 yards on average. So not that matters here, but just long term, this guy is going to be.
Yeah, this is exactly kind of what you want to see. Like a guy that has past pedigree. Like he was a top amateur coming out of Germany. He won the Low Am the year Colin Morikawa won the Open in 2021. Now he's kind of made the transition into full-time professional golf. And like we're now starting to see a bit of life out of a guy that has always had the ability, has always had the pedigree, right? Not only did he have the 3rd place finish last week in Bermuda, I thought he performed really well for the first time. He was really in contention on the PGA Tour, kind of holding on to that 3rd place finish. He finished just 3 shots behind eventual champion Camilo Villegas. But he also finished 2nd. Like this has kind of been coming. He finished 2nd in his last European Tour start last month at the Andalucía Masters. Finished again solo 2nd at what's it called? Valderrama, which is, one of the most iconic courses on the European Tour, lost by 1 to a guy like Adrian Moronk, who was on the cusp of being a Ryder Cup pick this year. So it does seem as if, like, if you're looking for upside, Smith at 75 presents a lot of it because it feels like he's, again, we've known his name for a little while, and now it feels like the talent's kind of coming into fruition. He's starting to get results on the PGA Tour. So a third place at Bermuda, like I wouldn't have really characterized Bermuda as like a great course fit for a guy like Matty Smith, but the fact he finished third there, I think there's a lot of through lines to draw between Bermuda and here. So yeah, don't mind that play whatsoever.
No, and I think that speaks bounds about how good that approach game actually has been. I think there's a lot of previous performances that kind of leaned on that driver and that distance, and I think last week was a pretty good representation that he doesn't necessarily have to have that fully working.
Yeah.
Let me see. So getting down into the true sixes, one of the guys that I have this is course history and this is just wishful thinking, but Kevin Kisner has played here historically very well. He's part of this world, another Georgia guy. And, Kisner, I think even a little more than Webb Simpson, really personifies what this course sets up for, in my opinion. He's a very good approach player, very good at scrambling when he needs to be, excellent putter. He's got a T7 and a second place finish here. Last start in 23 was a T29. Kisner's form is definitely not necessarily been there, although it's been better the last two starts. Kisner at 6,800 though, I think that's a pretty good value actually on this course in this field.
You're a braver man than me playing Kevin Kisner in 2023. I guess I'll take my one share out of 10 of Webb Simpson and call it a week. But I don't really have a lot of interest in Kisner. I'll be honest with you. I get the sentiment. Returning to a place, probably his most consistent course over the course of his career. Obviously won here back in 2015, I believe that was. Yeah, 2015. So yeah, I mean, if Kisner shows up and he brings his game, then he's certainly live to pay off this price. It's just there's a lot of downside of him just shooting 81 on day one, and all of a sudden it's just completely tanked. So yeah,
he'll have a good time, right?
yeah, exactly. And I mean, who doesn't like Kiz? I would love to see him on the first page of the leaderboard coming up here. So I do want to get to like two more guys below, kind of in the sixes. Number one is a guy that you pointed out to me in your modeling today. I want to know how you got Kelly Craft to number two in your model at $6,700, and I want to know what your exposure is looking like right there, because I don't think I do see kind of what you see with the overall approach play and the putting. But are you just following your model blindly here? Are you really heavy on Kelly Craft, or you think it's a bit of an aberration?
So I played Kelly Craft last week because I thought based on the analytics and based on the course setup that it made a lot of sense. Yeah. With that logic in mind, I actually think this may be an easier course. At least one of the days, it's going to be an easier course. And statistically, he still rates out well. And the modeling that I shared with you earlier, most of the approach metrics and most of the off the tee and overall ball striking metrics, et cetera, are relatively evenly weighted in my models. So, just in transparency, if people out there do tinker with modeling, I had 8 categories on my model. The majority of the approach and ball striking metrics were evenly rated around 12%. So, so that just kind of gives you an insight as to how I got him to pop where he did. Definitely not intentional. Definitely not a guy that I can probably tell you I've played maybe twice in my DFS career. Yeah. But I think 6,700, I think he rates out really well. And he's in there with guys like Tyler Duncan, which I kind of get, but Tyler Duncan is, projected 6-7%, which is almost double. And then it's a slippery slope below that. I mean, maybe you take some shots at Russell Knox, but
don't do it. I speak from experience. Never Russell Knox, not in 2023.
But you really got to pick some guys that you're willing to gamble on down here, and there's not a whole lot of guys that I saw even close metrics wise to him. So that's how I landed there.
Yep. I get it. Like I'm not really out on Kelly Craft, especially when you consider the players he's priced around. Historically very accurate off the tee. Obviously coming in with a really nice, recent bit of form on approach. Last 5. I mean, actually, I'm on the wrong page. That would help. There we go. Yeah, last 5 tournament, 2.5 shots off on approach per tournament. So historically, actually a pretty good putter too. So like the slipper kind of fits. Like I understand the love for Kelly Craft. It was just a little bit jarring to see him at 2. in your modeling. I was wondering what I was going wrong here, not being completely 100% on craft.
No, I do have some like kind of aggregated win stats in there too,
Okay.
and he's another kind of excessive 15 to 25 mile an hour wind range.
Yeah.
Tends to gain more strokes, especially on approach.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, no, I totally get it. Trust me, when I saw it, I was like, okay, let's try this a different way.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's like top 25 in my modeling. So I'm actually surprised to hear that he's so, I guess for a 6,700 golfer, 6% is pretty high. But yeah, I expected him to kind of be a bit of the chalk, which in general, under 7K, I don't really like to play guys that are anywhere close to 10% owned. I'll take my chances with some, a pretty comparable guy that's similarly unproven around him at very much low ownership. Maybe two more guys that I want to bring up. I don't want to commandeer your show.
Hey, I'm here for it if you are, man. I'm enjoying it. So you keep rolling.
Exactly.
Seth's probably gonna go. You and Ian were on for an hour and 20 minutes. You just having that good a time. Yeah, Seth, stay out of it. We're having a good time.
Exactly. I'm not used to having a producer, so we just go until like we run out of names to talk about. Flag running. All right. So full disclosure, I am a bit of a stand for this guy. Wesley Bryan, 6,300. I have interest in. Let me kind of lay it out real quick. So historically, Wesley Bryan, like legitimately one of the worst drivers of the golf ball on the entire PGA Tour. Even when he was at his peak, finishing top 5 at Riviera, winning at Harbour Town, like he was an objectively awful driver of the golf ball. Last 5 starts, though, Wesley Bryan, actually a tour average driver of the golf ball. He's been, over his last 5 starts, minus 1/10 of a shot. He's actually gained off the tee in 4 of his last 5 recorded starts. And you talk about kind of the long-term profile of Wesley Bryan, Southern kid from South Carolina, really good on Bermuda grass, great short game, really, really elite wedge player, particularly at his peak. I understand, like, he went through a spell of, like, really poor play, but he's made 4 of his last 5 cuts. He's $6,300 at the golf course. I think suits him pretty well. If the wind kicks up, to your point, like, he's got a world-class short game. So, like, as wind increases and obviously, like, guys will start to miss more greens regulation, that's when short game, I think, becomes a bit more of a factor. If it's pretty benign all week long, like, short game for me is not really a factor at all. But it is a nice bonus to have just in case the weather does pop up. But he was like the one guy under 65. Like if you want to go like stars and scrubs, like I think Wesley makes a decent case here, $6,300.
No, I definitely see the recent form type of stuff with him, and he's an eye test guy though too. Like I think he may far outperform the stats, the overall like long term stats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't hate that. He's really tough to get to pop right now just because he's just not had a.
Yeah. No one's gonna play him. Like he will be like less than 1%, assuredly.
Yeah, you can get him at a pretty deep discount ownership wise. So I definitely don't hate that, and the recent form piece definitely makes sense. So play the hot hand with that guy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that once we start talking about Wesley Bryan, I think that's kind of our cue to to say our final goodbyes. But I'm open to anything you've got kind of in the dregs here at 6,400, 6,500.
So I really don't have a lot down here that I'm interested in. I mean, there's guys that I take stupid shots at occasionally, but even that, this is one of those weeks where I think the meat and potatoes balanced kind of 9K type of build and finishing in the low 7s makes just a ton of sense, especially if you're playing single entry. If you're playing, GPPs, you're going to have to get a little wild. But I think you and I gave 2 pretty good pieces if you're down in the 6s that like make some sense. But I definitely prefer a more balanced build this week. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think you can do it pretty easy. Finding some leverage plays. So Bo and I always end our show on first, who do you have for first round leader? I am just going to go full Brian Harman here at 80 to 1, and I will take. So I got him at first round leader and to win. So it doesn't have to go wire to wire.
Okay.
But first round and the winner, 80 to 1, which I thought was a really compelling bet. DK didn't have solo, just first round leader props. You had to pair it with the overall win. So
yeah,
80 to 1 on that seems doable.
Yeah. I'm scrambling real quick to find guys that start in the plantation course. Because I would prefer if they started on the par 72, couple extra par 5s on there. I don't think the par 4s are that much more difficult than they are on the seaside. So in general, if you're talking first round leaders, that's the direction I would lean. I got to say, I think Eric Cole feels like a really good first round leader. A guy that can go out there on the plantation course, get hot with the putter, get hot with the irons. Historically not been the most clutch performer on the weekends. He finishes, T3 a lot, T4 a lot in the final group. But I think Eric Cole goes out there and has a really nice Thursday.
Yeah, I don't hate that one bit. I do have one. I like to do just stupid stuff with my money occasionally. So I found Will There Be an Albatross plus 1100 on DK. So I hit the yes, and then if I'm going to say that, I also have Will There Be a Hole in One plus 350. So I got both those. But yeah, so I definitely there's some fun ones, but. Last thing we do is overall who our just die on the hill outright winner is, and again I'm just gonna ride or die Brian Harman, so that's my outright this week.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I want to be spicy and say Ben Griffin, I'd be lying to the public. So ride or die. I just think, man, JT Poston 35 to 1 is a really good bet. I think it's a really good bet. So yeah, I think he's in the mix. I think RSM's a really, really good fit for him. If he can continue the iron play that he's shown over the last 3-4 months, like he's going to be a real danger. So I think he's probably, for me, the biggest misprice on the outright betting board. I think he should be right up there with guys like Harman and Connors, etc.
No, I love that too. I love that too. Well, it's been super fun. Tell anybody that's actually watching us or where they can find you, and give them all the vitals.
Yeah, so I'm one half of the flag hunting duo. You can find us on Twitter at @flag_hunting. I cover the golf side of things. My friend Chris will cover the NASCAR. I'm sure you've seen Chris if you follow the IBT guys, the Backroad guys. He's been on there a couple of times. So that's our general Twitter page. You can follow us there, see all the bets that we have for a given week. And then I do write a little bit for Rotoballer on a week-to-week basis. I do a course preview article and a prize picks article that usually comes out kind of Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. So if you want some more, if you don't want to listen to my voice for a week and you just want to read what I have to say, it'll all be in there comprehensive. I put everything I can to that couple thousand, 3,000, 4,000 words a week. So if you're really into the minutia of breaking down golf courses and making some outright picks, that's where to find me. So, but yeah, Connor, had an absolute pleasure here. Sometime one of these days we'll get you, we'll get us all together, you, me, and Bo, and obviously we need to get you over there on flag hunting at some point. It's my New Year's resolution for 2024 that we have a lot more guests on our show, and but yeah, you'll definitely be at the top of the list whenever I get around to making a guest list, and we can actually maybe sort some legit dates out. But yeah, enjoyed it, man.
No, for sure. 100%. And yeah, everybody go follow Ian, because he is a sharp guy. Great writing, great information every single week. So been a privilege, man. And I definitely look forward to collaborating more in the future. It's been awesome. So look forward to having you back. All right, everybody, that has been the 19th hole. So weed through our video and make some good picks, go win some money, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.